Hello, everyone, and welcome in to another episode of the RTI Recruiting Podcast. I am Nathaniel Rutherford of RockyTopInsider.com, the managing editor for RTI, and I am joined by our special guest, again, Brandon Martin of VR2. No Matt Ray, he's got a lot of stuff going on. This is, of course, Mother's Day, so hopefully all of you are having a good Mother's Day if you're listening to this on Sunday. If not, hopefully you had a good Mother's Day. If all of you who have mothers out there and get to celebrate with them, I'm very happy for you guys. Very happy for all of you. And Brandon, I'm very happy for Vol fans, very happy for Tennessee right now because, again, we're recording a recruiting podcast because it's been another really, really good weekend for Tennessee on the recruiting trail. This is the third weekend in a row where we've had some really good, big news for Tennessee in recruiting. You look back 2 weeks ago, you had five-star Dylan Brooks committed to Tennessee on Sunday. Last weekend, you had Tennessee get two commitments with Cody Brown and Deshaun Rucker. Brown is a four-star. I imagine Rucker is going to be a four-star by all accounts on all of recruiting services at some point too. This weekend, Tennessee grabs a trio of four stars over the weekend. Two are teammates. One is a quarterback. You had Kaden Evans, four-star defensive tackle on Saturday, four-star linebacker Aaron Willis on Sunday, and then again on Sunday on Mother's Day, four-star quarterback Kaden Salter. Brandon, let's kind of go in order here of just when they committed, so we can kind of go in chronological order of when these guys committed. Let's look at Evans first. I look at this kid's film. I look at his size. It's 6'4", 320. The way he moves, how disruptive he is with that size, I think he is an ideal kind of nose guard type for Tennessee's defensive front. And I was just watching his film. I thought this guy has a lot of potential. He's a little raw in some areas, but the fact that he could already just eat up double teams, and he's not just a space eater. He's a guy who can actually make his own plays. But the way he is, how disruptive he is, how the long arms he has, and the way he moves on the line, he is going to free up a lot of other linemen and some linebackers to make other plays. And I just think he has a lot of potential as a nose guard in Tennessee's 3-4 defensive front.
I like Kaden Evans a lot. He is a really, really good football player. He's a really good defensive lineman. I think with Tennessee's defense, I think he's athletic enough that if you bumped him out, he could play that 3-4 end. Mm-hmm. Again, we know Pruitt likes those guys to be around 300 pounds. That's what he's played so far. When he's had his choice at things, he's gone with the big guys up front. And I think Evans is athletic enough to slide out there and do that. But I'm with you. I think he's a nose tackle. Tennessee has really they had to get at least one nose tackle in this class. It was really pretty evident they had to pull at least one nose tackle into this class. And you said it well. Evans is that guy because he can come in and he commands a double team. And if you're talking about a 3-4 defense and the way that it works, one of the most important premises and one of the principles the entire defense functions off of is your nose tackle has to command the double team every play. The opposing offense has got to dedicate two guys to the middle of the offensive line. They've got to put two guys on your nose tackle or else the play is going to get blown up. And Evans can come in and he can command that. Now, as a nose tackle in a 3-4, you can be great at that. You can do your job extremely well and not make a tackle all game. If you're blowing plays up, eating up blockers, forcing plays to go somewhere else, and allowing your linebackers and defensive ends to go make a play, you're doing your job. But like you said, Evans can not just command that double team, he can defeat it. He can rip through it. He can bulldoze guys back. He has the strength to push even two guys back in a double team and throw them into the backfield. He can rip through. And he's got a pretty good burst when he closes on a ball carrier. He moves really well in space. He runs sideline to sideline. If he has to get off a block and get outside, he runs much better than a 320-pound man is supposed to be able to. I think he's going to be a big factor in Tennessee's defense going forward. And I think probably as soon as he gets on campus, he probably factors in that nose tackle discussion.
Yeah, I think he will. I think you look at Tennessee's nose tackle moving forward, and they don't have, you have Elijah Simmons, who you'd like to think has a pretty high potential, but you don't have a true guy where you look at and say, this is Tennessee's nose tackle of the future. And I definitely think, while it's difficult for a true freshman to come in and compete and have a big role as a true freshman along the defensive line in the SEC, specifically, I definitely think he's going to have, a say in the matter. I think he's going to find a way to get some snaps and come in and be a role player, if nothing else, when he first comes into Tennessee. But yeah, I think they needed to get a nose tackle. I think they got it, and I'm with you. He's a guy that's very versatile, athletic, and he's disruptive enough to where you can move him around and kind of use him as a more traditional DT, or as you said, as the kind of the defensive end in a 3-4 front. So I like him a lot. I like all the guys who committed to Tennessee this weekend, and we've liked all of them, but there's some more than others in this class. Speaking of ones that I like more than others, Aaron Willis, to me, the teammate of Katron Evans at St. Francis Academy in Baltimore, which is also where current Tennessee 2020 signee and I guess early enrollee defensive lineman Dominic Bailey also played. Aaron Willis has some of my favorite film of any of Tennessee's commits in this 2021 class so far. I don't know why exactly I like his film more than anyone else's. I just watching his film, he just is so impressive to me. He absolutely flies around the field, but he's not reckless. He's a guy who plays aggressively and has some violent tackles, but he plays with a very intelligent, very intelligent sense about him. He's a very smart linebacker, a very smart defender. I think, to me, his football IQ really sets him apart from other guys that I watch on film. He has really good instincts. He is smart enough to know, to let a play develop rather than going and over pursuing. He's a really good coverage linebacker who I think could be Tennessee's, once he develops and stuff on campus, could be Tennessee's best coverage linebacker on their defense in the next couple of years. I love the way he moves laterally. I love the way he moves sideline to sideline. I like that he's able to blitz. He's not just a kind of a one-trick linebacker. He's able to blitz and get to the backfield and do things effectively there. I just really, really like Willis's potential, and I'll have a question for you here in a second, Brandon. But I'm curious what you see when you look at his film too.
Well, my best friend had not had a chance to watch Aaron Willis's film, and when he heard he committed, he asked me. He said, "What's Tennessee getting in this guy?" And the phrase that I used was a swivel-eyed destroyer of worlds. This kid is a seek and destroy missile in a helmet. He's so intelligent. He reads his keys so well and so fast, and he processes the information, and he has put in the film work, and it shows up when you watch him play. He puts in the film work. He's got a good idea of what's coming before the play is snapped. He reads his keys, he trusts them, he processes the information quickly, and he trusts what he sees. He trusts his keys, and he lets his athletic talent, which is pretty impressive on its own, is amplified by his mental prowess and the mental aspect of his game, because not only is he fast, but he seems like he's 2 or 3 steps faster because he starts going to where the ball's going before everyone else does, because he knows where it's going. And that's one of the reasons you see him. When you watch him on tape, he is always running as hard as he can. There is no turning on an extra burst of speed. There is no waiting for something to happen and then adjusting to it. When you watch him on film, the instant that you can watch the play register in his mind, and he takes off like he's shot out of a cannon. And that's the way he moves all over the field. He doesn't ever slow down. And when he arrives, he just wrecks people. I mean, it is a violent tackle. He is a punishing hitter. Very sound tackler. He doesn't miss many tackles. When he gets a hold of you, you're going down. But man, does he arrive like a ton of bricks. And again, he can run sideline to sideline. He can blitz. He's a dangerous blitzer off the edge, actually. If you're going to have a lot of offensive tackles, they're going to have a hard time keeping up with him when he comes from a standing start. On film, you see that he's really got a knack for timing blitzes too, though. And it comes back to that intelligence. He picks up on snap counts. He times them well, and he times his blitzes well. If he hits that line at a run, there's not a lot of offensive tackles that have a chance to stop him. He closes hard on quarterbacks. When he arrives and when he hits somebody, he forces turnovers. He makes guys think about, do I want to get hit by this dude again? He's the kind of linebacker that gives quarterbacks happy feet. Yeah. And then he can drop and cover. He is an absolute do-it-all linebacker. I think he can play anywhere in Tennessee's linebacking core. but just you love the film. You love the speed that he gets everywhere, and you love the surety that he has as he's going there because he's done his homework and he trusts what he's seeing, and he winds up in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, his film too, like I said, it's really fun to watch. Like you said, he's so smart that he seems like he's even faster than what he is because he's ahead of everybody else and he knows what's happening. I mean, he's a very intelligent player. I think he's going to be, I don't want to put too high expectations on him. I think he could be another version of a Henry To'oTo'o because obviously HT is extremely smart. That's one of the reasons why he was so able to do what he did as a freshman this past season for Tennessee is because he was very smart and he's gifted athletically. Those two together just made a very dangerous combo right there in the middle of Tennessee's defense. And that makes me think, while he's rated as an outside linebacker right now, I almost think that I think he's a kind of a 4-for-4 guy who can do, who can play just about any position in Tennessee's defense on the linebacking front. It does make you wonder, though, does he move inside? He's not the longest and kind of tallest linebacker out there. He doesn't have the kind of typical 6'3", 6'4" type of body you'd like to see from an outside linebacker in the SEC, for especially a pass rushing type of guy. So he's built a little bit more. I almost wonder if, they add more weight to his body because he can put on the weight and still be fine athletically and keep him inside. But I also wonder with the speed he has and his coverage ability, Brandon, maybe they don't put him at safety or put him at kind of a star, some kind of hybrid defensive back linebacker role. I just think Willis is so good athletically and so smart and able to cover very well that I think it's such a gift to have that in a linebacker, but I also could see them using him as a safety of some sort. I think maybe it'll depend on how Tennessee's defensive back group pans out and how their linebacker group pans out over the next 3 or 4 years, but I love that Willis is a guy that you can kind of put in multiple spots and he should be able to make a pretty good impact on your defense.
I agree with you. I think he's a guy that he's one of those guys, just put him on the field and let him go wreck people. Because if you put him on the field, that's what he's going to do. I think he's going to wind up inside. I think he can absolutely play outside. I do think he could probably play safety. I think he could probably play the star. I think there's a couple reasons he winds up inside. One is with the amount of running backs that Tennessee has brought in has currently got in their 2021 class, I think there's a really good chance that you could see Laneith Whitehead end up as a linebacker. Mm-hmm. And could potentially be playing inside, outside. He can play both. He does have that a little bit longer outside linebacker pass rush kind of build if that's the route they want to take with him. I also think if you're talking about a guy who's going to be a hybrid for Tennessee, Willis could absolutely do it, but Terrence Lewis is made for it.
Yeah.
He is perfect for that star role that Pruitt values so much. He has his size and skill set fit that to a T. And so I think because you have Terrence Lewis in the same class, you may see Willis stay inside because Lewis is so built for that hybrid role.
Yeah, I can agree with that. We talked about Lewis, I guess, a week and a half ago or so. All these podcasts are starting to blend together. We've done so many because there's been so much good news for Tennessee recruiting. But Lewis, we talked about him being versatile and being a guy who can play multiple spots, and that's a big key. We've mentioned that. I don't know how many recruits we've mentioned that for, Brandon. Not just in this 21 class, but in the 20 class too. But specifically with this 21 class of versatility in whether it's on offense or defense. I mean, you have guys who can play. If you look at Julian Nixon, who could potentially move to tight end, who plays wide receiver. You look at some of the running backs they have on the roster who could play. You look at Jabari Small last class, he could play as a slot guy, I think. You look at Elijah Howard, who can play running back. He can play defensive back. He can play kind of anything. But you look at the defenders. We've mentioned Lewis, who can play multiple roles. I think Willis can play multiple roles. You've got Kamar Wilcoxon, who can play multiple roles in the secondary, I believe. I mean, versatility, I don't know that we've seen more versatile, more just athletic players in a recruiting class for Tennessee ever. I mean, you look at those Butch Jones classes, and while they were good on paper, they had a lot of guys who, they kind of fit into a role. They weren't as versatile as I guess maybe some other athletes out there. I mean, you had some guys who they've moved positions and did stuff with, obviously, moving tight ends to offensive line or moving some guys outside to inside. But I look at what they've done, this coaching staff in the last two cycles specifically with 20 and 21 and a bit 19 as well. The kind of versatility this team's about to have, it's going to be I mean, it's going to be really, really interesting to watch. It's going to remind people, I think, potentially of those 90s and early 2000s defenses, because you had a lot of guys on those teams who were very versatile and who moved positions and who could play multiple roles on defense. And I don't want to put too high expectations on teams moving forward, but that's exactly what Tennessee had in the 90s and 2000s, was guys who could play one role, they could also switch over and play another. And I think you're going to see that a lot with what Pruitt wants to do with defense in the next couple of years.
Let's talk a little bit about some of those 90s teams and some of those 2000s teams. Of course, John Chavis was defensive coordinator during that time under Philip Fulmer. But there were games that Tennessee would come out on defense, and you may only have one man with his hand down in the dirt. At times, you didn't have anybody with their hands down in the dirt. Everybody was up, moving around pre-snap. Everybody was switching. Everybody was fading like they were going to blitz. They were moving outside. They were changing side to side. They were moving around over different offensive players. And as a quarterback, that's a nightmare, because you're going, who has who? Everything's moving. It creates a lot of confusion. But when you had the athletes that were able to come out one play and maybe you're attacking the center and the guard in the middle of the defense, the next play you're attacking the offensive tackle as an end. One play you're a linebacker and you're dropping into coverage on a tight end. The next play you're rushing, or you're dropping into zone coverage and the safety's blitzing. When you have that many moving parts and you can change your assignments and really the look of your whole defense without ever changing your personnel, that is a huge advantage as a defensive coordinator. And it's something that Pruitt and Ansley, but Pruitt especially, has had a lot of success with. You look at a lot of the Alabama teams he had, look at the Georgia teams he had, go back and look at the Florida State team that he was defensive coordinator for that won a national championship. You saw a lot of that movement. You saw a lot of those guys that played different roles, and you wouldn't sub anybody out, but your responsibility would change from play to play. And I think he's building that here. Versatility has been something that he and this staff have prized since getting to Tennessee. That's really something they have made a point of recruiting hard, some in 2019, but man, in 2020 and 2021, they are bringing in multiple guys that can play 2-3 positions, play 2 or 3 roles even within that. And especially on defense, that's going to be a nightmare when you have somebody as creative as Pruitt and Ansley building a defense with this many intelligent players, this many guys able to do different jobs, and they can switch up on you. I think you're going to see this result in a lot of turnovers before it's all over with.
Absolutely. That was a big point of emphasis for Pruitt at every other stop he's been at, is creating turnovers, and that leads to, I mean, you look at what his defenses did at Alabama, Georgia, Florida State. Obviously, they had a different breed of athlete there too, but Tennessee's working on getting that different breed of athlete into Knoxville too right now. So the turnovers are key for defenses to be effective, because, I mean, if you get a turnover, your defense is off the field. They don't have to do more work. That gives the offense a chance to go score some points. The more points your offense puts up, the less your defense has, feels the pressure on them. So getting turnovers is key for any defense, but Pruitt is an absolute, he loves that chaos. His defenses over the last, I guess before he came to Tennessee, remember that stat of his defenses at Florida State, Georgia, and Alabama, those 5 years combined, I think it had more turnovers forced than any other defenses in that time frame. I mean, he does a good job of it. That was one thing Tennessee has not done a good job of the last few years, and they got better at it last year. And I think they're only going to continue to improve with that, with the guys they're bringing in and with this coaching staff for sure. But Brandon, let's talk about the third and final commit, who's not a defender, an offensive commit for Tennessee, and I think a really intriguing prospect for this class, and that is 4-star dual threat quarterback Kaden Salter. Tennessee's going to have a very interesting quarterback room in 2021, assuming obviously that Salter sticks with his commitment and signs with Tennessee, and assuming, I don't know, assuming just weird, I don't know what Tennessee's quarterback room in 2021 is going to look like. I assume Harrison Bailey will still be here. Will Brian Maurer? Will JT Shrout? Obviously Garantano's not going to. What about Jimmy Holiday? Does he stick at quarterback? Does Tennessee bring in any kind of transfer between now and then, like JT Daniels or someone else? I don't know what the 2021 quarterback room is going to look like, but I can guarantee you, if Salter is still a part of this class and signs with Tennessee, he is going to compete for that job, and he's going to give all the other quarterbacks on the roster a run for their money, even as a freshman. I believe he's tracking to be an early enrollee. I think according to 247 Sports, they have him as an early enrollee on there as well. But he's a guy who I think is a true dual threat guy. He's not a guy that is, going to run first. A lot of times when you see that dual threat kind of tag on a quarterback, you think, okay, he likes to run the ball more than pass it. He's kind of a better runner than he is a passer. That's not the case with Salter. Watching his film, this dude has a good arm. He doesn't have, I guess, maybe the strongest arm you'll ever see, but he does have a good, strong arm where he can throw the ball downfield. He's very creative. He with the pocket breaks down, he's able to improvise and keep plays alive. And he doesn't just, when the pocket breaks down, looks to run. He moves around that pocket or moves around and evades pass rushers and tries to get the ball off and throw it first. He only takes off kind of when he has to, or if it's a design run call. He has really good footwork. I like the way he plays. I love his competitiveness. I love how good of an athlete he is. You can tell that he does a lot of hurdles and broad jumps and stuff like that for the track team at Cedar Hill in Texas, because he has just a quick acceleration when he takes off. He's got very strong legs, and he's just not easy to bring down. I think he is potentially a true gem in this class. He's rated as a top 100 overall prospect on 247, but I believe Rivals has him as a 3-star right now. I think he's going to be a bona fide top 100 prospect across the board on all recruiting services by the time everything's done, as long as he stays healthy and has a good senior season. I think Salter is a really intriguing, really good quarterback prospect for Tennessee in this class.
I like Salter a lot. I like Salter's film. He's got the arm. He can get the ball wherever you want to get the ball.
Yeah, his ability to throw on the run and how far he can throw on the run was very impressive to me.
He has the ability to throw the ball anywhere on the football field that he needs to get it to. Now, is it always going to get there like an absolute frozen rope that Harrison Bailey's going to throw to anywhere on the field? No, it's not. Mm-hmm. But he's also going to run laps around Bailey in a foot race. Salter is so impressive throwing on the run. When he has to move that launch point, his footwork is so good. It's really fun to watch him on film because his feet always seem to be in the right place, even when he's scrambling. Even when he's trying to buy time, he's constantly keeping his feet set and keeping the ball high and a good carriage ready to throw as soon as a receiver presents themselves. And from something that you can't really understate here is not only can Kaden Salter throw the ball to anywhere on the field, he can throw the ball to anywhere on the field while running for his life.
Yeah.
And put it on who he wants to put it on. Now, on some of those really deep throws, the really deep down the field to the far hash kind of throws, he has to put a little air under it and let his receivers run under it and go get it. But he has the arm to get it there, and he drops it right in the bucket. He can throw underneath. He can throw deep balls with good velocity, good enough velocity to beat safeties closing in the SEC, I believe. He's going to have to work on hitting that last step of his drop and getting the ball out on time. At times, he's so elusive, and he's so good at scrambling, and he is so good at making defenders miss in the pocket while he allows something to set up downfield or causing a play to break down. I think that he's able to do that in high school, and I think at the next level it could cost him some sacks.
Yeah,
could cost him some sacks, could cost him some turnovers in the SEC. And I think that's one of the things Jim Chaney and Chris Wink you're going to work with him on is, okay, when you hit the top of your drop, the ball's got to go. The ball's got to come out. But you don't want to coach that ability to create and that ability to buy time out of him. I think the quarterback that I have watched that he reminds me the most of in just what I've seen, and I'm not saying this is who he's going to be, but he looks like, if you remember watching Russell Wilson when he was young at NC State,
mm-hmm.
The build is about the same.
Yep.
The release is similar. They were both good runners, but Wilson, even early at NC State, and Salter's doing this in high school, they're not necessarily scrambling or running around to run. Their feet are always set to throw. Their eyes are always downfield, and they are looking to throw the ball downfield. And as they extend that play, they're forcing the secondary to cover longer. If the secondary makes a mistake, Both of those guys let that ball rip, and they put it on the money, and they make you pay for it. Salter makes you defend the whole field because of his arm and his legs, and he makes you defend it a long time. And if anybody makes a mistake anywhere on the field during that long time, he can torch you for a touchdown. That's a rare weapon for an offense to have. And it'll be interesting to see, because if you're Tennessee, you have all three types of quarterbacks that you can really think of here. You have, next year, you're going to have Harrison Bailey, who is your traditional prototype. Bailey is a better runner than he gets credit for. Mm-hmm. If Harrison Bailey has to pull the ball down and run, he can snap up 10, 11 yards and get out of bounds in a hurry and get a first down with somebody not paying attention. Now, he's not going to rip a long run off and run 40, 50 yards for a touchdown, but Bailey is not a statue back there. But he's your more prototypical big, tall, huge arm, always looking to throw. That's where he's going to do nearly all of his damage is with his arm, but can get it all over the field accurately and in a hurry. You have Jimmy Holiday at the other end of the spectrum, Jimmy Holiday's got a good enough arm to be an SEC quarterback. He can throw the ball downfield, but he has to throw it with air under it. He's got to let receivers run under it, but he's very accurate doing that. He lets guys run under it. He times it well. And between the hash marks to about 10 or 15, 20 yards down the field, he's throwing darts. He is on the money in that intermediate game. Then he runs a 4.38 40 when he decides to pull it down. So he may be the fastest guy on the field on top of that. And then Salter's kind of in the middle. Salter has got a big arm. It's not as big as Bailey's. He's a good runner. He's not as fast as Holiday. So you've got three different guys there that do kind of different things and give you the full gamut of what you could want as a quarterback. It's going to be interesting to see how Tennessee develops these guys, because Salter is a guy who can yank the ball down and run for a long touchdown. There will be designed runs for him in the offense. The read option will be a real threat when he's on the field. He is a good enough runner to do that, but he's looking to throw first most of the time.
Yeah, I can't say it enough. I'm a huge fan of Salter, and I really think that you put it perfectly there, that Tennessee is going to have kind of all three different types of quarterbacks you typically look at what you have in a room with Bailey, with Holiday, and with Salter. And Salter's he's kind of the best of both worlds, of both Bailey and Holiday a little bit. I'm just very curious to see how he develops and what he can do, because I think he needs to. One thing I'd say about watching him throwing and everything, he needs to kind of tighten up his throwing motion a little bit. Sometimes he has the tendency to have it a little more drawn out than you'd like, or it's going to take him a little bit longer to get rid of the ball. If he can get that tightened up a little bit and crunch that down some, that's only going to help him reach his potential sooner and better. So I think he's got a lot of potential. Tennessee's 2021, or I guess their 2021 quarterback room is going to be very interesting to watch. And see kind of how that plays out, who wins the job, who stays, who doesn't. I have no idea for right now, talking in May 2020, what Tennessee's 21 quarterback room is going to do. But it's going to be a fun one to watch. I don't think you're going to have a surefire projected starter unless Bailey comes out this season and ends up starting and then balling out. But I think it's going to be very fun to keep an eye on. But I think your Russell Wilson comparison there, Brandon, I think it's spot on. That was a guy who I looked at with this film, kind of reminded me of the same thing, because Wilson can run in college and in the pros. He's a guy who can run, but he doesn't do it unless he has to, or if it's a designed run necessarily. But he's just such a good thrower, and I think Salter can develop into that potentially. Brandon, we could sit here and talk about these guys who just committed all day long, but we also wanted to add on here before we ended the podcast, Tennessee may not be done. I don't know if that's today. I don't know if that's later on this week. But there's been plenty of rumblings about Tennessee potentially adding another commitment sometime soon. But, without kind of trying to sit here and speculate maybe who that could be, who could be committing here the next couple of days or later on today or whenever, it happens. We were talking before we hit record here about who's still left on Tennessee's board and who still has a chance to, be in this class. And Tennessee's getting pretty full pretty quickly. They have 21 commitments now. We assume they could take a pretty full allotment of 25 in this cycle. you always got to assume that there's a chance they get out a transfer or two here and there. That would kind of change the numbers, but you can back count some guys in certain spots, especially now with the the COVID outbreak. You're going to have a lot of guys who wouldn't have, who were going to visit but couldn't visit otherwise. You can probably count them as blue shirts. I wonder what they're going to do with that kind of situation with this class in particular. But Tennessee, you look at other guys that they're still targeting. Amarius Mills, Tony Grimes. Those are 2 5-stars. Smell Munden is another 5-star Tennessee's targeting. That's not it, Brandon. We were talking. You have Trinity Bell. You have Miles Campbell. You have Hudson Wolf as kind of tight end kind of guys and guys who can do different things. You have Peyton Page as another option on the defensive line. Nyland Green as a cornerback option. Jeremiah Williams is another kind of pass rusher linebacker option. Junior Colson, Jabari Ritzie. I mean, Daquan Brown, Dietrich Pennington. I mean, there are a ton of guys Tennessee still is looking at that, and Trevally Price is another one that doesn't get mentioned a ton, but I think should get mentioned more. William Griffin, another one who's an in-state in-state offensive lineman. There are a ton of guys that Tennessee's still looking at. Brandon, they're going to start turning, whether it's turning away guys who are currently committed or turning away some of these targets. This is going to be a class where Tennessee is going to be venturing into that kind of Georgia, Alabama territory where I think they're going to have to start turning away some 4-stars potentially, or some guys that they really like, but they're just not going to have room for them in this class.
If Tennessee comes out and wins 8 games this fall, I think 8 games, going to a bowl game, winning a bowl game, I think you probably keep most, if not all, of the guys currently in this class that you want to keep, that you don't. There's a few guys in this class they're probably going to recruit over right now. And I don't even know that Tennessee planned that, but they suddenly are recruiting as well as anyone in the nation. I mean, you're talking about Tennessee has landed 11 guys with a 4-star grade or higher on at least one of the 3 major scouting services in 11 days. That is nuts.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that is absolutely unreal.
And right now, the 2 guys who are that rank the lowest, sorry for cutting you off, the 2 guys that rank the lowest on 247 Sports are probably going to be 4-stars by the time this is all said and done. That's Deshaun Rucker and Tylen Evans. I mean, Evans, to me, I think he's guaranteed to get a 4th star. I think Rucker will as well. So those are 2 guys who are kind of the lowest rated guys to commit to Tennessee in this 2-week span. I think both those guys are going to be 4-stars. I think it's just a matter of time for both those guys to get bumped up to 4-stars. So yeah, this is just to kind of build off your point there. This is incredible.
And Rucker is rated as a 4-star on ESPN right now. So he's got that grade 1 place. I think he's going to be a consensus pretty high 4-star before it's over with. Tylen Evans is going to rocket up boards because his film is fantastic. If he does for a season what he did for the back half of last year at Hutch,
yep,
he's going to get even more attention than he already is. So you're talking about Tennessee has been bringing in elite guys, basically one a day. Now you've had some off days, you've had some days where you got a few, but it averages out to one a day for 11 days. Now, we don't think they can keep this up. Eventually, they're going to run out of space. But we also said we didn't think they could keep this up after Julian Nixon committed. Mm-hmm. And boy, were we wrong. You're talking about a team right now that is just, they are absolutely on fire recruiting. And you're hearing people all over right now talking about, well, how's Tennessee getting these guys? Look, this is a team that is top 10 in NCAA history in wins. This is a team that, it's not like Tennessee has not been recruiting well. They pulled in back-to-back top 10 recruiting classes in 2020 and 2019. In 2019, with the guys that Florida had fall out before spring camp ever started, mm-hmm, that put Tennessee in the top 10. So back-to-back top 10 recruiting classes, top 10 all-time in wins for a program. You've got one of the largest and loudest stadiums in the nation. Great fan environment. Oh, by the way, you've got 3 former National Recruiters of the Year on staff. I mean, And don't look now, but Derek Ansley's trying to make his way as the fourth.
Oh boy, yeah.
The Vols, for all that some of the coaches that left Tennessee this offseason had done for the program, Tracy Rocker, Chris Rumpf, Kevin Scherer were guys that were kind of talked about as Scherer was the best recruiter of the bunch, and maybe it wasn't fair to judge Scherer on some of the guys that he missed on because it felt like he was maybe doing more than he should have had to do. We've heard Tracy Rocker, really, really good on-field coach. He's been fired several times for being dead weight recruiting. I mean, that's just what his history has been. Suddenly you don't have dead weight on the recruiting trail anymore because you add in guys like Jimmy Brumbaugh. You add in young guys like Shelton Felton. You add in a guy like Joe Osave, who has been huge in the Northeast for Tennessee and who is making big waves with Tennessee getting these St. Francis kids. You're watching Tennessee. This is a really good recruiting staff. And now everybody's recruiting well. The whole staff's recruiting well. That's a big deal. You have the facilities. You have the history. Now you're able to start pitching to kids. You know, we've had success on the field. Look where we're going. We have another good class. We have guys in place. You guys are going to be the class that helps us to really turn the corner. There's a lot to sell right there right now for Tennessee. They have a lot of momentum. They have a lot of great peer recruiting right now. The guys who are on campus in Knoxville and the guys who are in this class, and you can't say enough about Kamar Wilcoxon, are completely and totally bought into what Jeremy Pruitt's selling. And they are trying to bring anybody that wants in that's pretty good along for the ride. This class is not done yet.
No.
It's unbelievable to think about that, but you know, Tennessee may be in a place they may have to turn down some 4-stars depending on who gets bumped in rankings and who doesn't, and who Tennessee recruits over, and if they're able to land some of these other big name guys. You start looking, if Tennessee were to land an Amarius Mims and a Smell Munden or a Tony Grimes, you start talking about adding another 5-star or two to this class, and some of the 4-stars they're still in on. This class could make a run for the number one class in the nation.
Yeah, it's going to be hard to unseat Ohio State, but Tennessee, if they get a couple more 5-stars and stuff, they're going to make a run for it. It is going to be, unless Ohio State loses some guys, though, I think they're going to have that number one spot. I wouldn't say a lockdown, but it's going to be hard to top them. And you talked about this entire staff coaching well. Just right now, obviously, this is still May 10th, and we still have several months to go before everything gets finalized. But as of right now, on May 10th here, Tennessee has, on the 247 Sports recruiting coaching rankings, Tennessee has 5 guys in the top 25. The only other team that can say that is Ohio State. Both those schools have, Tennessee and Ohio State both have 5 coaches in the top 25, of 247 Sports recruiting rankings. You have Derek Ansley at number 2. You have T. Martin at number 9. You have Brian Niedermeyer at number 14. Jay Graham at number 17. And then at number 24, you have Joe Osave. So that's 5 guys right there for Tennessee who are in the top 25 of the recruiting rankings, of coaches' recruiting rankings. Like I said, the only other team that can say that is Ohio State right now. And that's incredible. Like I said, I think it's obviously going to change some of the, I don't know how many of those guys Tennessee are going to be able to keep in the top 25 or whatever, but I imagine Derek Ansley, T. Martin, and Niedermeyer are going to kind of all stay up there pretty high up. And, I mean, Jay Graham's could bump up some too, because depending on how much of a bump and stuff Tennessee's running back commits get with Evans and Howard, I mean, that's probably going to keep him up there in the top 30, top 35 or something too. So Tennessee is just right now, I mean, this is unbelievable. Another point I was wanting to mention actually about Salter, I forgot to mention this, but I know, Brandon, you all got to talk to him. I've got to talk to him, not when he committed, but I got to talk to him back when he visited Tennessee back in March. And that was the last school he got to visit. He was on here. He was on campus the very last day visits were allowed before the COVID-19 outbreak shut down visits for the foreseeable future. He was on campus to see Tennessee practice, and one of the things he said that to me that stood out to him about Tennessee was that the Vols they have a dedicated quarterbacks coach. The offensive coordinator isn't the quarterbacks coach; he's the OC. But they have another guy who's the quarterbacks coach, and he said getting to see Chris Winkie have that one-on-one time with the quarterbacks really stood out to him. That to me was a big deciding factor, in my opinion, for Salter to come to Tennessee, was the fact that they have Chris Winkie as a quarterbacks coach, who is was an outstanding college quarterback himself. But the fact that Tennessee's offensive coordinator Jim Chaney can help out with the quarterbacks, but you have a guy who can spend some pivotal one-on-one time with the quarterbacks, and I think that really stood out to Salter, as well as I think just the environment and what all the coaches, how they coached. He said he really liked watching the practice. I got to Knoxville around 8 o'clock, didn't leave until sometime after 5, so kind of like a typical workday schedule for his visit when he came to Tennessee. So he really enjoyed that visit, and I think that really kind of sold him on Tennessee and talking to the coaches and stuff as well. But Brandon, going into the podcast here, we could talk for another 20-30 minutes or so, but I think we'll go ahead and end this one here now. There's a lot of stuff on both of our sites, Rocky Top Insider, and I know for you guys at VR2 over at Sports Illustrated. Share with our listeners here what you guys have on the site for VR2, what you guys have coming up, and anything else you want to plug.
Guys, it has been as busy as it can be with recruiting for Tennessee the last few weeks. It honestly doesn't sound like it's going to slow down too much anytime soon. We'll be there. We'll have the breaking news as it comes out. We'll have analysis pieces. We'll have interviews ready for you. Right now, if you're looking for interviews with Tennessee's new commits, we have those up. If you want to see what these players are about, we have those up. Jump in our community section at si.com/college/Tennessee. If you've got any questions, put something up on our community on the message board. Matt, myself, Dale, somebody will get back to you. We'll talk with you about what you want to know, about what we know. As these stories break, and we're still working on more, because as Nathaniel said, we may not be done yet. We'll have the news ready to go. We'll have stories ready to go for you. You can follow us on Twitter at _VR2_. You can find us on Facebook or Instagram at VR2. If you want to follow myself, I'm Brandon _VR2. Go check us out. We will keep you up to date on all the best content and all the current content that we have. Eventually, it'll be more than just recruiting, but between sports being shut down and Jeremy Pruitt deciding that he's just going to tear the top off the recruiting world right now, I'm fine with that being most of the content.
Yeah, I mean, there's not, like you said, not much really to talk about in the sports world right now. Excuse me. So I've been very very thankful that Tennessee has gone on this recruiting binge they've gone on, and I think Vol fans also are extremely thankful. But you can find them at si.com/college/Tennessee. Follow them on Twitter at _VR2_, and you can also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. We're at Rocky Top Insider on all of those, and you can find our website, rockytopinsider.com. Appreciate all of you listening and following along, whether it's on a typical kind of podcast way on your phone or if you're watching it on YouTube. We really appreciate you guys. Subscribe to the channel on YouTube, give us a like, turn on the notifications, all that stuff. We really appreciate you guys so much for all you do. Again, happy Mother's Day, whether you're listening to it on Sunday or later. We appreciate you guys. Happy Mother's Day. Until next time, this has been another episode of the RTI Recruiting Podcast.